Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We're glad that you're here today to learn a little bit more about credit and talk with us through this conversation. My name is Sarah Scruggs, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague Laura from HUCTW. Laura, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this workshop with the Harvard University Employees Credit Union. We feel really grateful that we have built a collaborative relationship with them to help educate ourselves and our members on various topics that are so near and dear to all of our lives. So welcome, thank you for coming. And I'm gonna pass this on over to Migdalia, to Sarah, who's gonna start off the subject. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Laura. I don't mind being taken for Migdalia anytime. If you'd like to do that, just let me know. But like Laura said, we are so grateful for this partnership, and I'm grateful for all of you being on today and taking this first step and learning a little bit more about credit. I think a lot of times we hear about these things, whether it be on the news or from our colleagues, and sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to sign up for a presentation like this, but I'm so glad that you've made that first step. So we're glad that you're here. Like I said, my name is Sarah Scruggs. I am a community engagement specialist at the credit union, and I have on Migdalia Gomez with me as well, our AVP for community engagement, and Dominique Verdu, who will be in the questions panel in the chat feature. But if you have any questions throughout our time today, we want to make sure that we get those answered. We've gone ahead and muted all of our attendees so that you can hear me and that you can continue doing whatever you need to do in the background, whether that is eating your lunch, taking a break, wrangling pets, children, etc. in the background. Go ahead and do that. But we don't want the muting to mean that you don't ask any questions. There is a questions feature either on the right-hand side of your screen or at the top navigation. And we want to make sure that you know where this is. So if you could test this feature for me by letting me know, where are you joining us today? Where are you joining us from today? And you can be as vague as you would like or specific as you'd like in this answer. But if you could, in your questions feature, let me know where you are joining us from today. And that way I know you know where the questions feature is. We've got someone joining us from Medford. We've got someone joining us from the School of Public Health. The laundromat, what a great place. Cambridge campus. We've got multiple people from the School of Public Health. Shout out. Awesome. Perfect. Home office. We've got folks all over the place. Watertown, Kennedy School. Shout out to the Kennedy School for sure. I'm over in Somerville area, so really glad to be coming to you live from my kitchen table and joining probably a lot of you at your kitchen table too. The presentation is being recorded today, so if for any reason you miss a segment or if you want to send this along to any colleagues or friends, it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel to rewatch, and we will be sending a follow-up email to you all with the recording in it so that you have easy access to it. We do ask that at the very end of our presentation, we'll post a workshop survey link in the chat. We do ask that you just take a couple of moments to give us some feedback. Every, I believe twice a year, we meet up with our team over at HUCTW to go over all of our survey feedback and to let both of us know what you all want to hear from us. So please do let us know so that we can continue making these a success. HUECU is Harvard's not-for-profit financial institution. We offer everything that a bank does, but we believe we do it just a little bit better because we get to host events like this, specifically for those of us in the union. I'm a proud HUCTWer myself, so glad to have all of you joining us. But do know that you are eligible for membership at the credit union, and membership looks like a $5 share savings account. So a really great opportunity for you to get involved in the community in a new way here at the credit union. We have a mobile app that is really wonderful, all of the access to online banking. So even if you leave your position at Harvard, you can still keep your membership at HUECU. So that's really wonderful to know. As well as once you're a member, everyone in your family is now eligible to join the credit union as well. So you can make it a family affair with us by having everybody on an account. If you have questions about membership or any of our products or services, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask us. We'd be happy to let you know about that. But know that for this presentation, we're talking mostly about a financial education topic, and that is credit and how it works. So this is really broken up into a few different sections talking about credit, but we're going to start with really the basics. Why should you even care about your credit score? It's an important question because there are a lot of things that I have to ask this question about. Why should I care about this topic or subject? It can impact a lot of things, your credit score. And maybe you are new to the United States and you've never had a credit score before. Maybe you opened a lot of credit cards in your early 20s and now you're realizing the impact of that on your credit score. So a couple of things just to talk about. I want to show you this example, which is a 36-month car loan at $25,000. So, this is all an example. But you'll see on the farthest right-hand side, your credit score. So we have credit scores ranging from below a 500 all the way to an 850. And then you'll see next to that column, right next to the credit score column, the APR column. On the APR column, you'll see interest rates ranging from 4.23%, which is pretty low, to 17.71, even not eligible. And this is what we call the tiered pricing model. The credit union does not participate in tiered pricing. If you qualify for a loan at the credit union, more than likely you qualify for the same rate that anyone else does that qualifies, but many financial institutions participate in tiered pricing based on your credit score. So that means that based on your credit score, whether it be extremely good or maybe somewhere in the middle or maybe not where we want it to be just yet, you may have to pay more money based on that credit score. So you'll see here that additional cost in a year just from having a lower credit on the lower end is almost $2,000 per year just to borrow this money. And so one thing that we always want to take into account is the life of the loan. You may hear us talk about this a little bit during our presentation today, but the life of the loan is actually how long you'll be paying on that and how much more money you'll be paying. So you can see here the difference between a great credit score and a not so wonderful credit score is about almost $6,000 over the life of this car loan, right? And you may look at this example and say, oh my gosh, there's no way that that's real, but it is absolutely real. This is something that happens. This is something that goes on. But no, if you are maybe in the lower half of that credit score chart, you have the opportunity to continue working on that credit and then refinancing that debt. So even if you are in that 500 to 589 category, you may not have to continue paying that high interest rate if you decide to refinance once you've done some work on that credit. So there's always the ability to refinance, which is something to note. So let's talk about what is credit versus what is not credit. Utilizing a loan now, so utilizing money now and paying it back over a period of time. So buying something and then paying it back over a period of time. And this looks like education loans, car loans, home loans, credit cards. You're essentially borrowing money from the bank and then you're paying them back later. Credit is not paying for something using your income-based funds. So a checking account, a debit card, it's not a savings account, anything of that nature. Those are all income-based, whereas credit is a loan. You're being lent money up front to pay it back later. There are three major credit bureaus, and those are Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. They manage credit in the United States, and they each could possibly have different information on you based on what is reported to them specifically. They collect information from places like creditors, primarily lenders, financial institutions, utility companies possibly, collection agencies, court, and other places that they can collect this information on you. Your credit is tied to your social security number, so it is based on you as an individual. It is not based on, like, let's say you get married, you and your partner will have different credit scores more than likely because it is based on your social security number, which is why international students that you may work with or international populations do not have a credit score more than likely because they don't have a social security number. And so credit is tied directly to that social security number. And every consumer has their own credit score. You may not have a credit score yet if you have never borrowed money. That is something to note. You may not have a credit score yet if you've never borrowed money. And that's not a bad thing, but it's a good thing to know and be informed about. That's what I think is really essential to credit overall, is being informed. So we have something called a credit report. In a credit report versus a credit score, you've probably heard those two terms. A credit report, we like to say, is a lot like a transcript versus a credit score, much more like a GPA. A credit report is a transcript because it shows all of your history. It shows, let's see what it shows. It shows all of your debt, credit card debt, auto debt, education debt, any other debt that you may hold. It shows any time you've been sent to collections. It shows your payment history. This is a historical view of on time, which is great. We want them to see our on-time payments, and the historical view of any late payments. Your account history, open or closed accounts in good standing at financial institutions. Like on my credit report right now, although I've paid off my car loan is still on there, showing that I had a good history of paying back that loan. And that's something that I want to be on there. I want people to see that I've been able to pay back that loan. And you can check your credit report once a year for free on annualcreditreport.com. And I want to show you this because annualcreditreport.com is the only source that is authorized by federal law to give you your credit report for free once a year. Does this mean that if you go to Credit Karma or another website that you can't get your credit report for free? It does not mean that. No, you can definitely get it from those places, but this is the one that you know is safe, that you can trust, and that you know is authorized by federal law. And it does have to give you a free once a year credit report from each of the 3 bureaus. So I actually think that this is the month that they're doing away with the free credit reports weekly. So I won't go into that. But previously during COVID, they were giving away reports weekly, which I think may be a little much. You don't need to check it every week, but a good cadence is about once every 3 to 4 months to check up on your credit report, especially if you've recently applied for a loan or if you're planning to get a loan in the near future. And again, this is annualcreditreport.com. An overall tip for security on your finances: anytime you do anything with your financial information, you should be on password protected Wi-Fi. Do not go to a Starbucks and look up your credit report. Don't do it. Don't get on your online banking at a Starbucks. Keep those things under password protected Wi-Fi at your home. Hopefully everyone's home is password protected. It's a safe place for them to have that information. But just to be safe, we're not going to put it on like guest Wi-Fi or anything of that nature. And that's just a tip about frauds and scams to keep yourself abreast to. What does a credit report look like? When you open this report, what could it look like? I'm going to show you a couple of different things on this credit report. But first, I want to ask if you could type in the question box if there's anything you see that maybe you have a question about or piques your interest, or is like, wow, that is a bad indicator or a good indicator for this person. So maybe if you could put in the question box for me something that you notice on this credit report that piques your interest. Let's say that. All right, it looks like someone noticed that all of these are current, so their payment history is current. That's what the C means. Wonderful. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, yes, it looks like someone noticed that this is a revolving account, so this is a credit card. You can see it up here. It's actually Harvard University employees credit card, so it's a credit card that they had with us. High balance compared to limit. And I love this. Someone asked a question and then someone said that there was a high balance up to the limit. So we see here, yes, that there is a credit limit of $5,500 on this card. And the high balance this person has had over the history of this credit card is $5,429. That's very close to the credit limit, right? We're just a few $10 bills off from that. So it is something to note here that, and Magdalia will go over how to utilize this, but credit limits on revolving accounts, we try to keep about 30% or less on that balance. Okay, so this is much higher than 30% of 5,500. I always like to go with an easier number for my mental math. If we have a $10,000 credit card, we want to keep it below $3,000 on that card. A revolving account is a credit card, whereas an installment account is for a more standard loan, the same thing that you pay back every single month. And just a couple of other things to point out. They have no delinquencies on this account, no derogatory terms, which is wonderful. Their current balance is a little bit high. So you may see that they may have a little bit of a lower credit score, but they've done a lot of things right. Their payment history is really great. And that's something that we love to see. Moving on to the next one. This is from Comcast. So we see here that that's kind of an odd person to have on a credit report, right? A cable company that we all know. But it's because they've been sent to collections. This person was sent to collections over a $310 bill. And that is because this has happened a lot to folks, is that they were living with roommates and they thought their roommate had paid the final bill when they moved out, but unfortunately they hadn't. And so they were in collections for this bill and they actually didn't know. When we talked to them through this bill, they had no idea that they were in collections for this amount. And that is why you check on your credit score or credit report. That is why you check your credit report. Because this collections can bring down your credit score. And I noticed that someone asked the question, they don't see the credit score on this credit report. That is true because credit scores are managed by totally different companies than credit reports. So your credit report is not going to have your credit score on there. And Magdalia will speak more about the credit score specifically. But you'll see here that it is seriously past due. But what this person can do is they can pay this $310 bill, which this person was totally fine with paying that amount. And they paid it and were able to speak with that lender about getting this off of their credit report. And that is something that you could possibly do if you've been sent to collections and have paid back that debt. You can speak with them just about possibly getting it removed from your credit report. Really just an example of how long certain things stay on your credit report. Open accounts in good standing are on there forever. Wonderful. So in a closed account in good standing, so like my car loan, auto loan that I had, although it is closed because I'm no longer paying it, it will stay on there for 10 years because it was in good standing when I closed that account. And then down here, we see things that could impact our credit for years to come in the future. And really what I want folks to take from this is that it is extremely important to make sure that we're making choices with our money that will set us up for success in the future. And we'll talk about some of these when we talk about credit scores. So I won't spend a ton of time on this chart, but just know that every time we make decisions with our money, it can possibly affect us in the future. So what if you get your credit report this weekend and you're looking through it and you find that there is a loan or an account on your credit report that isn't yours? Or there's an error that maybe you paid off a certain loan, but it is not looking like it's paid off on your credit report. What should you do? I always say start with the middle here. Contacting the lender first is normally the best opportunity because the lender is someone that you've specifically worked with. If this is like a missed payment or something of that nature, contacting the lender and asking, you know, I made this payment, I have proof of that, and I can show you. You do have to make sure you have all the records of your payments. So this can be done through online banking statements, if that's something that you can use, or credit card statements, things of that nature, to show that you did pay those things. If this is an error where it is somebody else who has gotten this account, and there can be human error, so if you're typing in a social security number as a lender and you've accidentally typed in one number off, that can happen. But you need to contact the credit bureau as well. The dispute has to be in writing, and the Bureau has 30 days to begin the investigation. More than likely, the investigation will not take only 30 days. It will take longer than that, but they have to begin the investigation in 30 days. And one thing to note is whenever you are disputing errors on your credit report, you will need to follow up probably just to make sure that things are taken care of. So make sure that you're always taking down who you've spoken with, and making sure that you know what to do if something has gone wrong, or if something has not been taken care of. So you can say, I spoke with this person on this day, once you call back and follow up with them. What should you do if your information is compromised? So let's say that you look on your credit report this weekend and there are multiple loans taken out of your account and you had no idea what those are. There's something called a fraud alert, and a fraud alert alerts businesses that they need to go through extra steps to identify you before it issues any lines of credit. And this is something that you can set up by contacting each of the bureaus and then placing an alert on your account. And this alert lasts 1 year. So this is more short term. What some people do is if they find that maybe their information is out there. I know when Experian had their issue with a data breach, this is something that I put in place, was a fraud alert on my account. And that way if I was going to get credit the next time I needed a loan, they would just need to verify my identity with additional steps. They couldn't just verify it with, let's say, one form of ID. They needed multiple, or something of that nature. But this is free to set up. This works well too if maybe you're going abroad for a year and you're not planning on having any loans in the future, in the year. This is a good thing to set up just so that you're being safe, keeping your identity safe. A credit freeze, in comparison, is where you have to have a PIN number to receive a credit line. It makes it really difficult for identity thieves to open accounts in your name after this. So this is a good step to take if there has been known fraud on you, on your social security number. This is a good step to take because the credit freeze lasts until you turn it off. And so this could last the rest of your life. If you don't foresee, this is something that we recommend, especially for folks who are taking care of elders in their family, to set up for them because they may not need a loan later in their life. And it's a good thing to have on their account so that if there is a loan applied for, the caring person in charge can make sure that this was legitimate, and use that PIN. So it is something to note, but both of these are free to set up. and they can be used in different situations. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Migdalia to talk more about managing credit scores. It looks like there have been quite a few questions about credit scores already, so I'm excited to dive into that topic.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone again for joining us this afternoon. And keep submitting those questions. It definitely helps us to know what you want to learn more about so we can spend much more time on those topics. So I'll be going right into what is a credit score. I like to think of a credit score similar to a grade point average, if you will. The credit report is similar to a transcript. It has a collection of your outstanding accounts or current accounts. It also provides information about the amounts owed. But really, when we look at it, or sort of the number that summarizes your report, is the credit score. And that credit score itself, it is independently managed, meaning that even though you do have 3 different credit bureaus, they're not the ones that are determining your credit score. There are 2 different entities. There's the FICO score and then the Vantage score. And they're the ones that are essentially have their own algorithms. They have their own strategies for developing your credit scores for each of the credit bureaus. I always, very often we hear, what is your credit score? And it makes it seem like you only have one credit score. But in reality, we have multiple credit scores. It depends on which credit bureau is being pulled. So it could be a TransUnion credit score, an Equifax credit score, an Experian credit score. But then to make it a little bit more complex, it could be an Experian credit score using the FICO model, or it could be an Experian credit score using the Vantage Score model. So even though, you have multiple credit bureaus, we have 3, and those are the big 3. There are others that may have some that exist, but those are the 3 big ones that we speak of. There are also different credit models within these scores. Now, I say all of this not to make it overwhelming, but just to make it so that it hopefully clicks when, if I don't know about you, but if you've ever been on any of your credit card apps or bank accounts, I know we provide credit scores for our members. I know Capital One, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, I believe they all do it as well. Now, if you see your credit score with that one of those apps, but then you check your credit score somewhere else, it may not always match. And you may wonder, well, why is that? Why do I have a 740 here, but I have a 729 over there? It's because there are different models and there are also different bureaus that credit score could be pulled. Now, the good thing is that across the board, the consensus is that the higher the credit score is, the more favorable the rates that you will receive when you apply for loans, for a credit card, for other products. The lower the credit score, it means that you have opportunity to bring up your credit score. Now, I don't like to say that's a bad credit score, because really, if you don't currently need credit, it's, yeah, okay, maybe not ideal to have a 600 credit score, but you know what? If you don't currently need to borrow, that's okay. That just means you have an opportunity to work on some things to bring up your credit score, which I'll talk about shortly. But overall, the key to be aware of is that the higher the credit score, the better. You typically will start getting very favorable or really good rates or options available to you when you're around the 670 mark. Note that every lender will do things a little bit different. There are some lenders that Sarah mentioned at the beginning. I gave that example of tiered pricing, that some lenders will always automatically, as part of their underwriting, say, okay, the higher the credit score, like let's say the 800 scores will get this rate, others will get, if you're a 700, you get this rate. But there are some lenders or some products that once you qualify, you qualify. Like I know we do that a lot with a good amount of our products, that once you qualify regardless of what your credit score is. But I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide regarding what goes into the credit score. I'm getting a lot of questions. Please do keep those coming in. I am going to take a moment to answer some of these shortly. Now, with what goes into your credit score, let's think about it as just people. Let's say, you heard a little bit about Sarah in the introduction. You heard a little bit about me in my introduction, but that's more or less all that you probably know about Sarah and myself. Now, let's assume that you have some funds that you're able to lend to either Sarah or myself, or maybe both of us. But Sarah is a person that pays all of her debt on time. You pulled her credit report and you can see she had a lot of those C's, a lot of current. But I, on the other hand, have paid my bills for the most part 30 days late, 60-day late. You see a lot of late payment on my account. Instinctively, which of the two would you rather lend to? Sarah, who always pays on time, or me if I'm paying late? Most of you probably would lend to Sarah over lending to me. And sort of makes sense if we think about it. If Sarah's paying back, it's more likely that she will pay you back, at least on time, and that can help you with your cash flow. Now, if I pay late, I may be more of a risk of not paying on time in the future, which may mean that you may not get your money back. So as you can see here, 35% of your credit score is about payment history. It means, are you paying your bills on time? And I will say bills, even though, some bills like medical bills, utility bills, they won't appear on your credit report unless you're substantially late. There are some new credit score models that are trying to incorporate them in, and also your rent, but they're just not as commonly utilized right now. So really when we're speaking to these, we're speaking to any debt that you have and making sure that those payments are made on time. But if, as you saw, if a utility bill, if a medical bill isn't paid on time, it could impact your credit score, not immediately, but many, in the case of medical debt, it could be after a couple of years. For credit, for collection items, it really depends on that utility company when they may submit it. The other piece is amounts owed. Now, when you saw that credit report that Sarah went through, you saw how much, and I do like that some people commented on this. I know that there was someone that said, well, what is considered a high balance and how does that affect your credit score? So that's a really good point. A high balance is anything over 30% of that credit limit. And you might think, well, it's only 30%. How is that higher? How is that considered a high balance? How is that even a thing? Well, the reason for it is, let's go back to, you have money to lend and you can choose between lending to Sarah or lending to me. If Sarah and I both have, assuming everything else is equal, we both have a credit card with a $1,000 credit limit, and every month Sarah charges $300 and pays it off in full. Actually, let's switch it. Sarah charges $300 but doesn't pay it in full every month. I, on the other hand, $1,000 credit limit, charge $900, and I do pay it off in full. Sarah's actually going to have the better credit score because she kept her credit utilization under that 30%, or at or under that 30%. The reason for that is, as you saw in the credit report, we couldn't tell what that last payment was. Past payments are not an indicator that we're going to make the same payments in the future or that we're going to pay the same amount. And I know that sounds a little tricky because I just talked about payment history. So yes, payment history does impact it in the sense of, are you paying on time? The amount, however, that you're paying does not go into your credit report and isn't utilized to predict your ability to repay in the future. And that sort of makes sense. If we think about it, I don't know what the future will hold. I, hope and I'm always optimistic and hope things are well. But what happens if next month there's a financial circumstance that doesn't allow me to pay my credit card in full? Now I have a higher credit card balance. I'm at that $900. My limit is $1,000. I may go over my credit limit, or I may have to seek out additional credit because I have limited access to these funds, or I no longer have access to these funds because my credit balance is so high. So that amount's owed, it just means try to keep the amount that you owe not only per each account, but collectively. So all the debts that you have, try to keep it 30% or less. And emphasis on less. You don't have to carry a balance. Yes, we need to use our credit card. I saw someone put in the chat, in the questions, that after years of having a zero balance on a credit card, they closed my account due to inactivity and my score went down 9 points. Thank you for sharing that. The reason for that is that we do need to use our credit cards at least once every 6 months so that it's still active. Even if we're not, you don't have to carry a balance. You just need to charge something, pay it off. Think of subscription services that you utilize. most of us probably have a Netflix account or Hulu or Disney Plus, insert whichever entertainment platform you enjoy. If you do have one of those, or a phone bill that you're paying, a cell phone bill, whatever it may be, gas, put that on your credit card, a charge that is reoccurring, and pay it off in full every month. You do not need to go close to that 30% in outstanding balance. You don't need to even be at 10%. You just need to use the credit card, because as one of our attendees mentioned, not using the credit card, they could actually close your account due to inactivity, and your credit score can decrease because now you've lost that credit history. Which actually brings me to the next one. So about 15% of your credit score is based on how long you have had credit history. So for individuals that maybe just recently started with credit, that doesn't mean that you're going to have a low credit score, because the credit score that you have when you start credit is based off of what was your credit utilization. Were you paying on time? Did you try to keep your amounts owed under 30%? If that's the case, when you establish credit, you're probably going to have a good credit score. If when you start credit, you are going over your limit, you are making payments not on time, you're making late payments, then your credit score would not be ideal. It'll probably be a little bit on the lower side. But the length of the credit history, that just means with time, there'll be more information on your credit report. So as a result, assuming that you are paying on time and owing less than 30%, that will be more favorable for your credit score. And that is something that people have, asked a lot about in the future. It's like, well, what can I do with the length of my credit score? How can I accelerate that? Really, it's unfortunate we can't accelerate time. We can't fast forward that. But if the other two components are 65% of your credit score, so the other ones are really the ones that are the most important. And typically those are the ones that you can make small changes to help bring up your score. Now, the other two are about 10% each. And I do say about because this is what FICO Score provides us. I'll share what Vantage provides in a couple minutes, but it's not 100% exactly like this. This is just more or less so that we have a basis, so we're aware of what goes into our credit score, but depending on the model, it could be a little bit different. Now, the other 20%, it's made up of your credit mix. We had a question earlier as to what is revolving credit, and Sarah did explain that that is credit card debt, anything that the amount revolves / changes month to month, depending on your utilization. And then there is installment, which is typically your student loans, your mortgages, your car payments. It is a loan that you borrow, and you know how many installments or how many payments you have to make through the life of that loan until it's paid off. So it's more predictable. Having a good credit mix means having both and having used both responsibly. That does not mean, though, that I should go out and get an installment loan if I don't have one. And I can tell you from history, there have been times that I haven't had an installment loan and my credit score has been really good because I had the other pieces. So we never recommend taking on additional debt unnecessarily to bring up your credit score. There are other things you can do. Having a good credit score should not cost you money. You should not have to take debt for that. And then the other piece is new credit. Now I'm going to go back to using Sarah and I as an example, but let's say that every month I am applying for either a new credit card, a student loan. I'm applying for debt every month. And Sarah is not. Sarah applies maybe once every year, maybe once every 6 months as needed, not as frequently. Assuming all other things are equal, Sarah will have the better score because she is not applying for credit each month as I am. And I'm using month and 6 months as an example. These are more concept than specific. So I don't want it to be tied to that time frame, but just the concept. The more that I'm applying for credit, those are inquiries that are going to negatively impact my credit score, because it means that ultimately I may be at a higher risk of now taking on additional debt that I may not be able to repay. However, if you are, and we always recommend, if you are shopping around, which we do recommend, for a credit card or student loan, whatever loan product you need, we do recommend shopping around, looking to see what other lenders will offer. And do that though during a 2-week period. And that the reason for that is if you are looking for, let's say, a car loan, and you're looking around and apply to multiple lenders, assuming you do that within a 2-week period, the credit bureaus are going to make the assumption that you're shopping around for a good rate. So that won't have a negative impact to your credit score. It'll count as one inquiry. So if I apply to 4 different lenders to see what my auto loan rate would be, then in that situation, it would count as one inquiry. But if I apply in April, May, June, and July, those are 4 different months. Those are 4 different inquiries, and that could typically will have a negative impact on my credit score. I did say earlier that these percentages are really for the concept and not exactly always going to be 10% or 35, etc. An example of this personally that I have seen is I did apply for credit a couple months ago or a year ago, I think at this point, and I didn't impact my credit score 10%. So my credit score did decrease, but it was fairly low. It wasn't at 10% by any means. It really depends on your credit file. And that is why credit is very, very personal. Money is always very personal. What may work for Sarah, what may work for Laura, for Dominique, may not work for me. Assuming that Dominique, Laura, and Sarah all pay their credit cards and all their bills on time, and I'm not paying mine on time, if they continue to pay their credit card bills and their loans on time, it's good, but it's not necessarily going to substantially increase their credit score because they already have that good credit behavior. But for me, if I'm paying my credit card bills late or any other debt late, and now I start paying on time, it will increase my score much more substantially because I am essentially taking a behavior and improving it. It's very similar to, I'll sort of use weight loss or fitness. If someone is already exercising and eating well, that's good. That's going to help maintain. But it may not make as much of a difference if I haven't been exercising and I haven't been eating well, and all of a sudden I start, I may see more benefit because it's an impact to a current behavior. Vantage Score is the other credit score model. It's very similar, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. I do like to point out that they don't use percentages, which I like. They sort of just say extremely influential, highly influential. So you can see, but it's a very similar concept. Payment history, biggest one, making sure that we're paying those debt bills on time. Then the percentage of our credit limit used, which could be 30 or less. And then the age and the type of account, which is a little bit, it's more influential in this model, or at least it appears to be. And then the total balance to debt. And this, unfortunately, is one of those things that just takes time, but there may be times that you could refinance and reduce the interest rate that you have on current debt, and that could help you accelerate the repayment of certain debt. Now, this is a couple of sample credit scores that I want to show, and these are, I pulled these a couple years ago, but the concept is still the same, even with the credit report that Sarah showed, it's concept over the specifics. So here we have a FICO score, and you can see that it says FICO on it, and this was a model 8. For our purposes, you don't really need to necessarily know which model is being pulled. Just know that if you check an app and it shows you a credit score of 488, but then the credit union pulls your credit score, it could be different. So that's one of the key things. It's just knowing that it may be different based off where it's being pulled. Now, when you pull your credit report and access your credit score, you may get, you always will get some sort of score factor description. They'll always say something, and it's never going to be, oh, this is great, good job, you're done. There's always going to be something that is meant to help you increase your credit score. Now, the lower your credit score, the more room for opportunities to bring up your credit score. So more factor descriptions will be helpful. Let's go back to sort of that medical example. If we go to the doctor for a physical and we're not doing too well with health, they may give us more suggestions as to what we can do. But if we go in and we're pretty healthy, they're still going to say, they'll still find something to say, like, oh yeah, maybe exercise a little bit more, keep drinking water. So there's always going to be a comment. Here, the key big one is delinquency, meaning making sure that any outstanding debt is paid. Another example that we have is a credit score that's a little bit higher, but again, still the key for this one is the negative outstanding balance for the derogatory collection accounts or public records. So making sure you pay on time. Too few accounts currently paid as agreed upon. All of these are going to have a negative impact on our credit score. But as you'll see on the next one, we have a good credit score here. It's a solid 748, and it's still going to say something. So in this one, I like to point out time since most recent account opening is too short. One may read that and say, oh, I need to go open an account. You do not. That does not, they put that in there. That doesn't mean you have to go out and get a new credit card. The question, one of the questions that came in is, what does it mean too few accounts currently paid as agreed? That usually could mean that the person may be paying less than the minimum balance that's due, or that they're not paying at all, which I guess that still would be less than the minimum. So making sure that, again, the focus is on the payment history. So the payment history is a really big one, making sure that we're paying our bills on time. I mentioned this at the beginning, and I'm going to emphasize it again. Money is personal. What works for you may not work for me. Everyone's financial situation is different. So when it comes to improving your credit score, I'm actually going to start with the third one on this list and talk to a financial counselor, an accredited credit counselor. GreenPath Financial Wellness provides free credit counseling, and you all have access to this. We'll put the information in the chat, but it's huecu.org/greenpath, or you can go onto our Thrive page, which is huecu.org/thrive, THRIVE, and you'll have access to GreenPath Financial Counselors there. They will pull up your credit report. It does not impact your credit score negatively if you pull your credit score for educational purposes. So sometimes we do get that question, well, what if I pull my own credit report? That is a good thing. It will not impact your credit score negatively. And I do know that I noticed a couple people had negative experience, apologies, with a credit counselor, not GreenPath. So I do recommend contact GreenPath. They are a nonprofit just as we are, and we pay for this service, so it's available to all of you for free. And if you ever have an interaction that you're not satisfied with, just give me a call, send me an email, and I'll follow up with them. But they are amazing. They are, they've won multiple awards, and it's because they are truly caring people that will help. But when they pull your credit report, they can actually go through and give you specific situations or strategies to help you bring up your score, or maybe they'll just tell you you're doing great, which is always a good thing. I love to hear that I'm doing awesome. I think, we all like to get a little compliment here and there. So it's also good to call and just get that from them as well. There are credit cards there are products that you can possibly take on to help bring up your credit score. But again, I do not recommend taking on additional debt. So I'm actually going to sort of skip over that because there are, I would first emphasize talk to an accredited credit counselor. I don't want people to take on additional debt because you may not need to. There are other things that you could possibly do. And for those of you that maybe it makes sense, which is probably a very small population, GreenPath can walk you through that in a very informed way. I'm going to go through choosing a credit card a little briefly here because I know we started getting a lot of comments about, well, how do I choose a credit card? And that is why we added it to today's presentation. And that's also why I want to give always a thank you to all of you for attending, for submitting questions. We literally go through all of these questions that are submitted through the webinar, through the registration process. We go through all of them to help determine what blog content will we use, what do we add to our presentation. So thank you for doing that. There will be a survey in a couple of slides, or you'll see the link in the chat shortly. So do continue to give us feedback. But one of the ones that we received was, how do I choose a credit card? Credit cards will be usually promoted with all the bells and whistles. You're looking at information that's, you're going to get these 3 times the points, you're going to get, 2 times this, you're going to get a cash back. And those are all wonderful. Those are all great, but it's only beneficial if you're not carrying a balance. And for some of us, that may not be the reality. We may need to carry a balance month to month. But for those that are able to pay it in full, then those rewards tend to be more beneficial. Reason I say this is for a credit card, you're going to be charged an annual percentage rate, which is the first box that you see here. Now, if I'm being charged 11% and they're giving me 2% cash back, but I'm carrying a balance, really, I'm being charged 9%. So keep in mind that the rewards aren't going to be as beneficial if you're carrying a balance month to month. So when you're looking to compare credit cards or choose a credit card, you want to look for this. You want to look for this box of disclosure, which they have to provide. It is the same format, so all credit card companies have to use it. And that's what you really can compare, because it's going to tell you what is the interest rate for that credit card, what is it for cash advances, for balance transfers. This is an example of one of our credit cards that we had. I don't know if it's been updated since we put it in here, but it's lower than most credit cards out there. The reason I say this is that you may be like, oh, this is great. And I hope you're like, okay, this is good. But the reality is other credit cards may not be as favorable. We've seen credit cards that sometimes go up to almost 30% interest rate. So you really want to take a look at this information. It has to be disclosed to you. They also have to disclose the fees. So if there's an annual fee, if there's a transaction fee, such as balance transfers, that's a very common one that isn't promoted. You may hear like, oh, 0% for the first year, which is a good deal, but there's a fee, and it's usually a balance transfer fee. If there's foreign transaction, late penalty fees are really important, because many times some lenders will charge a late payment fee and then increase your credit score indefinitely if you have if once you, excuse me, not your credit score, they'll increase your interest rate indefinitely if you've missed a payment. So you always want to be aware of that. Now, one of the things too, if you don't want to get all these credit card offers, you can actually choose to opt out of credit card offers. Keep in mind, if you opt out, you are opting out. So you won't get them. They do have different options. So you can opt out for a certain time period. Indefinitely, you can opt out, I think it's like for 5 years. I forget the exact terms, but if you are looking for a credit card and you opted out, you'll have to be a little bit more proactive in doing the research yourself. I talked already about Green Path, but here's their information again. Free accredited credit counselor that's available to help you. It's free for you because we pay for it at the credit union, because we believe in the power of everyone doing financially well. Also, our blog, you can learn much more on our blog about a lot of different topics, including credit. We have a tag for credit. You can subscribe and get a monthly email with the most popular blog articles. And it's a really good resource that I recommend folks utilize. And as I said, we're getting topics as to what to cover based off of questions that we get during our webinar. So who knows, maybe one of your questions is being answered through a blog article. So thank you in advance for that. And very briefly, I am going to mention that we do have a fairly new credit card for those that are interested. I'm not going to get into too much into it other than that, just to let you know that we do have it available. But the key here is, when you are comparing shopping around, look at that box of disclosures that I mentioned earlier. And a very quick disclaimer before I jump into questions is keeping in mind, I said this, I feel like you're all going to hear me say this in your sleep. Money is personal, but it is. So a lot of what we said was meant to be educational, high level. We provide you with free credit counseling so you can get your specific situation spoken to and addressed, because it would be a disservice to say everyone needs to do this to improve their credit score. I don't know how your credit file is. I'm not an accredited credit counselor. Yes, I have credit experience. I've been trained, but everyone's situation is different. So please seek out certified advice for your specific situation. And I'm going to jump into a couple questions. Our contact info is here. But one of the questions we received, would family be able to do financial counseling if we're part of the credit union? Yes, they can. We know money is not just about you, but it's households. So yes, it is available to those in your family as well. So feel free to give them the information. They just have to mention HUCTW, and we don't get that information. So don't worry, we will not be looking at that. Someone said in the comments they need to teach this stuff in high school. Yes, they do. And I believe there is actually, I don't know if it, I think it passed, but there was, I don't know when it was going to be implemented, but I do believe there have been, I think there was something that was passed, the State House, to try to do that, to try to teach personal finance in high school. But I don't remember how far along they are. But hopefully it will be, because you are 100% correct. I'm just going through a couple of other questions. But as I go through the questions, I don't know if Laura or Sarah, if there's anything you want to mention. Okay, someone submitted a question. Should a parent check the credit report of a child to ensure that their SSN, Social Security number, is not being used? Yes, that's a very good question, a very good point. Yes, parents definitely check your child's credit reports to make sure. Unfortunately, we have heard of times that, people unfortunately will utilize the child's credit score and take debt under their name. So yes, that's a very good suggestion. Oh, thank you. Someone mentioned that blog.hucu. Yes, I think for when you go to the blog, you actually don't have to put the www. I don't know, unfortunately, why, but I think if you go to just blog.hucu.org, it should work. But thank you so much for letting us know. Someone said that they've only had one credit card. Is there any benefit to having more than one if you don't need it? I don't think so. If you don't need it, you don't need to take on additional debt. Having too many credit cards can become one more thing to keep track of and can lead us to missing payments or sometimes borrowing more than what we wanted to. So if even with one credit card, just keep an eye on what those items that we talked about were to try to have a good credit score. But I wouldn't necessarily take on additional credit debt just to build a credit score. Okay, a couple of the questions that are submitted, they're quite personal, so I'm not going to be able to address them because I don't know. Like some folks are asking, like, why is my credit score not increasing, or what? Yeah, a couple of others are just very specific. So I will recommend, again, reaching out to GreenPath because they can get into much more detail.
I will say that, hi everybody, it's Laura from HUCTW. That, we are in unprecedented times and people are finding themselves struggling in some ways for the first time and are trying to figure it out. So, I just want to make sure people aren't too hard on themselves if they find themselves in in a situation that you don't want to be in, and to remember that it takes time for things to get better in terms of your credit score and not to give up, because I think we often think we want instant results, and some things work that way, but credit scores don't.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that. That is it's so true. Yeah, these things definitely take time. And also, if you are in a situation that you're feeling maybe overwhelmed by either the amount that you may owe or just the amount of credit cards that you have, in addition to GreenPath Financial Wellness offering credit counseling, you're more than welcome to contact us at the credit union. We do have some debt consolidation loans. We have some products that will essentially help you spread out the amount that you owe over longer time periods so that it reduces the monthly payment. But the biggest piece is the score itself, the interest rate itself is substantially lower. I think right now it's at 5.99. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident it's around there versus some credit cards that may have 18, 12, 20% interest rate. So do know that you have resources available to help you. And yeah, you're not alone with this. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to GreenPath. You will get an email with this presentation and the recording and the slides. And we hope that you'll join us at a different session in the future. And that's all that I have, unless Laura or Sarah, there's anything else you wanted to add.
The only thing I would like to add, if you don't mind, is just to say, if you find yourself in any sort of situation that's extremely stressful or frustrating, you can always reach out to your union rep, and we might not have the benefit, but if the benefit is at the university, we'll know about it, and we can help link you to things that are outside of the credit union if needed.